At 37,000 feet, the private jet hummed through the clouds, slicing across the sky like a silver arrow. Inside, the atmosphere should have been calm, professional, luxurious even. But tension filled the cabin like a storm brewing behind clear skies. Ava Kingston adjusted the strap of her seatbelt and glanced out the window, her hand resting on her baby bump. 7 months pregnant. She was traveling with her husband, Daniel Kingston, the powerful CEO of Sky Alliance, one of the biggest private aviation firms in the country. IT was supposed to be a quiet flight from Denver to New York. Just them and the pilot. No fuss, no press, no board meetings. Just peace. But peace shattered the moment the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Not for a flight update, but for something else entirely. Next time, maybe your kind should fly commercial, the pilot muttered, forgetting, or perhaps not caring, that the mic was still on. The words weren't loud, but they were clear. Sharp, laced with venom. Daniel froze. Ava blinked slowly, processing what she just heard. Her breath caught in her throat. Did he just say? Daniel stood up, his jaw tight. The words rang in his ears like a siren. He did, he said coldly, already moving toward the cockpit. This wasn't just a rude comment. It was a racist insult directed at his wife, a black woman, pregnant, dignified, and the love of his life. He knocked once. Firm, controlled, then pushed open the cockpit door without waiting for permission. The pilot, a middle-aged man with years of experience and a smug look that quickly faded, turned around in his seat. "Is there a problem, sir?" he asked, as if nothing had happened. "You're damn right there is," Daniel said, voice low but steady. "You think you can say something like that and just keep flying my jet?" The pilot scoffed. "I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a joke. A joke." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You think my wife, the mother of my unborn child, is a punchline?" There was silence. The engines rumbled in the background. Daniel took out his phone. "You're done. As of now. Consider this your last flight." The pilot laughed nervously. "We're in the air. You can't just fire me mid-flight." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Watch me." The cockpit felt colder than the jet's cabin, though the air hadn't changed. The only thing that shifted was power, and the man holding it wasn't sitting behind the controls anymore. That Daniel's voice was calm, but every word landed with purpose. "I want you out of that seat. Now." The pilot hesitated, one hand on the yoke, the other twitching toward the throttle. "Look, I apologized." "Let's not escalate." "You didn't apologize," Daniel snapped. "You tried to downplay it. You humiliated my wife and thought there'd be no consequences." Behind Daniel, Ava stood quietly in the doorway, one hand resting on the frame for support. Her eyes, tired but defiant, met the pilot's, and he couldn't even look her in the eye. "I'll file a report," the pilot muttered, squirming in his seat. Daniel smirked. "You think this is a desk job where complaints go in a file cabinet? You're piloting a Sky Alliance jet. That means I own the air you're flying in, and I just clipped your wings." For a long second, the pilot didn't move. Then, without a word, he unbuckled his harness and climbed out of the seat. "Go sit in the back," Daniel ordered. "Now." "What? You're going to land the plane yourself?" The pilot scoffed. Daniel didn't answer. He was already stepping over the threshold, slipping into the captain's seat like it belonged to him. Because it did, he adjusted controls effortlessly. His fingers moved with practiced ease. Ava watched in the doorway, confused but slowly realizing something. "You know how to fly?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel glanced back at her, giving the smallest nod. "I used to be a pilot. Years ago, before I built the company." Ava blinked, stunned. "You never told me that." "You never needed to know," he said, eyes back on the instruments. "Until now." The former pilot slumped into the cabin seat behind them, fuming quietly that Daniel's voice came through the cabin speakers. "This is your new pilot speaking. We'll be landing early in Chicago. And for the record," he paused, "Sky Alliance does not tolerate racism. At 37,000 feet or anywhere else." Ava smiled softly. Her heart was still racing, but for the first time since the flight began, she felt safe. Outside, clouds began to part, and for the man who thought he was untouchable in the sky, the ground was coming fast. The jet sliced through the sky, steady and smooth under Daniel's control. He flew with a calm precision, like riding a bike he hadn't forgotten. Years may have passed since he last held a yoke, but muscle memory returned the moment his hands touched it. Ava sat quietly behind him, processing everything. Her husband, the CEO known for boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, was now her pilot. And somehow, it didn't surprise her as much as it should have. She looked over at the disgraced pilot seated across the aisle, arms crossed, face flushed with silent anger. He hadn't spoken since being removed from the cockpit, but Ava could feel his eyes burning with resentment. Daniel ignored him completely. His focus remained locked on controls and a radar, occasionally reaching for the radio to request an early landing window. Sky Alliance 760 requesting immediate landing clearance at O'Hare. Pilot substitution due to crew misconduct. He said clearly. There was a pause and static, followed by controller's voice. Sky Alliance 760, copy that. You're clear for priority approach. Runway 14R. We're alerting ground personnel. Ava leaned forward. They know what happened? Daniel nodded slightly. They will by the time we land. The pilot finally snapped. You can't end my career over one comment. I made this company millions. I've flown celebrities, diplomats. You insulted my wife, Daniel said, not turning around. And not by accident. You said it like you meant it. That tells me this wasn't the first time. Just the first time you got caught. Ava's voice was steady, though her heart trembled. You looked at me like I didn't belong on this jet. Like I didn't belong with him. That wasn't just bias, it was hate. The man didn't respond. His silence said enough. Daniel adjusted the heading slightly. The Chicago skyline shimmered in the distance, sun catching on the glass towers. You'll never fly under skylines again, Daniel said. And if I have anything to do with it, you won't fly for anyone else either. The jet began its descent. Ava closed her eyes and let the moment sink in. He defended her with more than words, with action, with authority, with unshakable love, and high above the world, she knew something had shifted. This wasn't just about a slur. It was about dignity, about drawing the line. And Daniel had drawn it at 37,000 feet. The wheels touched down with a soft thud, smoother than most commercial landings. Daniel guided the jet across the runway with practiced ease, his posture calm, eyes locked on the taxiway. Behind him, Ava exhaled slowly. The runway lights flickered past the windows like the fading heartbeat of a long, stressful flight. As the plane rolled toward a private hangar at O'Hare, a row of ground staff was already waiting, vests glowing neon in the early afternoon light. Among them stood a tall man in a black suit, flanked by two airport security officers. He wasn't just any executive. It was Marcus Hale, Chief Operating Officer of Sky Alliance. Ava turned to Daniel. You called Marcus? Daniel nodded. Did it mid-flight. I knew we'd need someone with authority on the ground. The disgraced pilot paled at the sight of the growing reception outside. This is overkill. I've flown for your company for 9 years. And those 9 years end today, Daniel replied coldly. You don't speak that way about anyone, especially my wife. The engines powered down. Silence blanketed the cabin, broken only by the hiss of the pressurization system. Daniel stood up, took Ava's hand gently, and helped her to her feet. She winced slightly. Her pregnancy made even small movements feel heavier, but her grip was strong. Together, they walked toward the exit, past the silent pilot, who now looked like a man watching his own downfall in real time. The door opened. Cool air rushed in, mingling with tension. Marcus stepped aboard immediately. Daniel, he greeted. Then his eyes shifted to Ava. Ma'am, are you okay? I am now, she said. Marcus turned to the pilot. Captain Reynolds. Step off the aircraft. Reynolds stood but didn't move. This is a misunderstanding. I made a comment, maybe inappropriate, but not career-ending. Marcus didn't blink. You didn't just offend a passenger. You insulted the wife of your employer and violated every code of conduct we stand for. The pilot's jaw clenched. He stormed off the aircraft, brushing past Ava without a glance. Security followed. Daniel exhaled, then gently kissed Ava's forehead. You okay? He whispered. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Not fear, but gratitude. You didn't just protect me, she said softly. You showed me what real love looks like. The conference room inside the private terminal was quiet, its glass walls revealing the now stationary jet outside. Daniel sat at the head of the polished oak table, his arm around Ava, who sipped water slowly. Marcus sat across from them, tablet in hand, brows furrowed as he reviewed the incident report. I've already spoken to legal, Marcus said, and HR's issuing the termination papers now. Captain Reynolds will be permanently blacklisted from Sky Alliance and flagged across all major carriers. Daniel gave a tight nod. Good. I don't want him near another passenger again. He won't be, Marcus assured. And, just so you know, the control tower recorded everything. His voice over the intercom. Your response. It's all logged. Ava looked up. You mean there's evidence? Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. And it's airtight. You handled this with grace. Both of you. She let out a long breath. I'm just glad it's over. But Daniel's mind wasn't done yet. I want mandatory diversity training implemented across every flight crew, he said. I want passenger feedback, reviewed quarterly. And I want every pilot to understand this company has zero tolerance for racism, sexism, or any form of prejudice. Marcus smiled slightly. Already in motion. You're not just reacting. You're setting a new standard. Daniel glanced at Ava, who was rubbing her belly gently. This isn't just for us. It's for the world we're bringing our child into. Ava leaned her head on his shoulder. The exhaustion was finally settling in, but so was relief. This wasn't a private battle anymore. It had become a turning point for a company, and maybe for more. As they prepared to leave the terminal, a young Sky Alliance staffer approached nervously. She was in uniform, barely in her 20s, with wide eyes. Mrs. Kingston, she asked, I just want to say thank you for standing up, for speaking out. People like me, women of color, we notice, we feel seen. Ava smiled, her voice soft but strong. We all deserve respect, no matter where we sit or who we're with. The girl nodded, then stepped back respectfully. Daniel and Ava walked outside, the Chicago wind tugging gently at her coat. The skies above were still and blue, and for the first time that day, truly calm. But this story wasn't over yet, not until the world heard what happened above the clouds. 3 days later, Daniel sat before a camera in a quiet studio, dressed not in a suit, but in a simple button-down shirt. Ava sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his. Their story had already started spreading, first among employees, then on social media. But today, they decided to tell on their own terms. No press filters, no spin. Daniel had said, just the truth. The camera light blinked red. They were live. 3 days ago, Daniel began, my wife and I boarded a private flight expecting peace and safety. Instead, we were met with something we both know too well, racism, from a man trusted to fly us through the sky. Ava continued, her voice steady. I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. Not because I believe what he said, but because I've heard it before, and I'm tired of hearing it in silence. Daniel nodded. This time, we didn't stay silent. I removed the pilot mid-flight and landed the jet myself, not out of pride, but because the moment demanded action. The video went viral within hours. Comments flooded in. Stories from black travelers, mixed-race couples, and employees across industries sharing their own experiences with subtle slurs and blatant discrimination. The clip was reshared by celebrities, news anchors, even other airline CEOs. The message was clear. Silence is no longer the standard Sky Alliance followed through. Company-wide reforms were announced, training intensified, and a new code of conduct was posted in every flight deck and lounge. Respect isn't optional at 37,000 feet or anywhere else. Back home, Ava sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Daniel joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one and sat beside her quietly. You didn't just protect me, she said, eyes on the fading light. You helped change something bigger than us. Daniel gave her a small smile. I just did what a husband should. No, she whispered. You did what a leader must. She reached for his hand and placed it over her belly. Our child will grow up in a better world because you didn't let hate fly. And in the calm that followed, they both knew this wasn't just a story about one flight. It was the start of a journey toward something higher.